Welcome to the Fly Route Pod. Whether it's your first time listening to any of our videos or you're a return listener, do us a favor. Please subscribe and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our content.
The Fly Route Pod. The Fly Route Pod. The Fly Route Pod.
All right. Let's get into the fly route for today. We got to talk about Ben Simmons. And where do you want to see Ben Simmons go? What is the fly route for Ben Simmons? And the first thing I want to say is we talked about this on episode 42. So if you ain't heard it, go back and listen. We had a great guest, Toya G, from the Chop Up Pod. And what you got to understand is Ben Simmons' value is probably at an all-time low now. But I personally believe that his value will increase over time as we start to get over what was an amazing playoff collapse and start to understand really who is Ben Simmons. Ben Simmons is a all-star, all-NBA defender. That is a fact. He is an all-star distributor and playmaker. He can score, but has recently kind of lost that touch in the playoffs. He can get to the basket. He can score in the paint, but he's not going to shoot. I think Kendrick Perkins may have been the person coined this first. He is all NBA. He is who he is, right? So considering who Ben Simmons is, and I think a lot of people want to create trade scenarios where this team will rehabilitate Ben and Ben will be a completely different player and start shooting the three or even shooting the mid-range shot. I'm not saying that's impossible. I'm saying based off what we've seen so far, it is unlikely. So, given Ben Simmons' current skill set, which is an all-star caliber skill set, where do you think Ben Simmons should go that will best maximize Ben Simmons? A lot of people want to give you this conversation from the idea of what is best for the Sixers when they want something back. That is an interesting conversation, not the one I want to have. Where does Ben Simmons go that maximizes the potential of Ben Simmons? That's really the conversation that I think is the most interesting to have here. So I have three options for you, and the first is going to be probably the most popular, talked about the most. It is Ben Simmons going to the Golden State Warriors. I think if you're thinking about this trade, you have to think that Ben Simmons is going to replace Draymond Green, not augment Draymond Green. Because the role that you envision for Ben Simmons would really just be Draymond Green's role. All-star defender, but unlike Draymond, I think Ben is a more versatile defender or just the breadth of players he can cover. He can really cover 1 through 4 effectively. And I think Draymond is more of a 3 through 5 guy. So it's interesting to think about that piece where that can actually even take some of the defensive pressure off Klay Thompson coming back from a second straight injury that cost him a season. But also his playmaking ability. We see Draymond play point forward a ton, setting the screens for people like Steph Curry, and you think, wow, Ben Simmons in that role, having shooters around him like Klay and Steph, finding them open in transition, in the half court, being able to run plays to get someone like Steph open. Sounds amazing. It sounds amazing. He can have the paint for the most part. When they run a small ball lineup, could you imagine Ben filling in that Draymond 5 role and what that looks like when Ben Simmons could have the paint entirely to himself on a team with a lot of shooters and some of the best shooters in NBA history? That sounds insane. Insane in a way that it can maximize Ben Simmons' potential and the current skill set that he brings to a team. Now, I don't know what this trade could even look like if they're not sending Draymond back, both in the realms of like matching salary, but also like, yikes, what does that Golden State Warriors team look like. The spacing becomes rough with both him and Draymond on the court. Adding a big to that, if they ever need to play big, sounds honestly difficult to imagine. But after that, Steph being able to extend defenses with his massive range, spread the court out, create driving lanes and space in the paint for Ben Simmons. Honestly, it sounds like a match made in heaven. It sounds like a way that you extend this Golden State Warriors dynasty with a young powerhouse style of player. So then that brings me to my number 2. And the number 2 is kind of interesting for me because I feel like this doesn't have as great of a fit as the Golden State Warriors would. But interestingly enough, it's the Minnesota Timberwolves. And this is an interesting trade to me because the biggest issue for Ben Simmons on the 76ers roster isn't just that he won't shoot and he's having trouble being aggressive. It's that him and Joel Embiid want to occupy the same spaces on the court to be their most effective or efficient selves right now. So that made me think, if you're trading Ben Simmons, right, where can you trade him where his conflict with the other big, the 5 men on that roster, isn't as glaring as it is over in Philadelphia right now? So that has me with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I feel like he would fit better next to Cat than he would Embiid. Cat is definitely more comfortable playing from the outside in as a big who can stretch the floor. We all know Embiid will shoot the threes, but Cat is actually significantly more proficient out there, and that can open up some of these lanes for Ben. Now, that in combination with Ant-Man, who I think is becoming a sneaky better shooter than he was at the beginning of his rookie season, and I expect for him to take that jump going into year 2. Malik Beasley, who has come on as kind of being a strong shooter and a scorer in his own right, and then Ben kind of running the offense. Now, D'Lo would also be great to space this team, and if you haven't heard this from me, I think D'Lo's best position is actually a 2, not a 1. But I imagine to get this trade to work, they have to send D'Lo back over to the 76ers, and that might actually be something that they'll take and like. Look, it's not the same level of defensive prowess, clearly, but he's a scorer at the point guard position for them and can make a huge difference in the construction of this team in Philadelphia. But that gives Ben the ability to take the lead point guard duties, run the offense, control the pace of the game for this team. And it's one that I liked a lot. Now, my last one is my most interesting one for me. And I think it's also the one that is, for the most part, kind of slept on, and people haven't thought about this a lot. But the Toronto Raptors, and maybe I'm crazy, let me know in the comments, wherever you're listening, if I'm crazy, at me on Twitter. But the Toronto Raptors, for me, I think is the prime position for Ben Simmons, and it's most likely centered around a swap with the Kyle Lowry contract. Now, 1-for-1, Kyle Lowry, Ben Simmons would actually work. However, of course, the Raptors are going to have to toss in some picks, maybe another player, add in something to kind of make things work for Philly. But we heard the Kyle Lowry for Ben Simmons, Kyle Lowry to Philly rumors pervasively this season. And I think this is probably a place where you go back to the well. Now, this allows Ben Simmons to also, a theme here, be surrounded by shooters. Fred VanVleet, Gary Trent Jr., Rodney Hood. They have real shooters on this roster, and Ben being able to set those people up, create offense for others, is kind of his prime skill. Also, it allows them to play smaller lineups. They really only have one true center that is getting paid and minutes on that team, that's Aaron Baines. And I honestly believe that they would be willing to sacrifice Baines' minutes coming off the bench significantly and really playing a small ball lineup with Ben and Pascal Siakam playing the front court where they can push the pace, keep the paint open for someone like Ben Simmons, operate in a way that allows them to space the floor for him to be his most effective self in the half court when you're not in transition. Fred VanVleet can run half court sets and half court offense, be a closer for this team if you're concerned about Ben Simmons in the clutch, shooting the free throws, having the ball in his hand, etc. But also his defensive prowess brings something to this Raptors team that can bring them back to what we understood them several seasons ago prior to this fall off of this season. He becomes the best playmaker on that team, and I think he's in a city that will embrace him, allow him to grow, and take some of the pressure off of him that he's currently feeling in Philly. Those are my top 3 options right now. I'm really, really feeling the Toronto Raptors as maybe the best fit outside of Golden State, but that's more because, well, Steph and Clay are